Peterborough. Welcome to my first ever video podcast. Each week I'll sit down with a special guest and talk about issues we face here in the community. This week we take a look at the opioid crisis and speak with harm reduction worker Chris Jardin at PARN. PTW junior reporter Taylor Clydesdale joined me for this interview, but felt the pressures of having to save a life. Have a look.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you calling 911 in an overdose?
8.
Okay. And then how confident would you say you are in responding to an overdose?
Sorry, do you mind if I sit down real quick?
Yeah.
I'm not feeling too well right now.
Sure.
Alright.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just seeing colors right now.
Serious?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just turn totally white.
Well, I don't know what about this is just freaking me out.
I could watch that video over and over again, but the opioid crisis is not a laughing matter in Peterborough. We've had 10 confirmed opioid overdoses in Peterborough to date in 2017. It is not nearly as bad as out west, but one life is too many. So Chris will talk a little bit more about where you can get a Naloxone kit in Peterborough.
Yeah, so it's super accessible. Really, our program has been designed to sort of make this many different entry points as possible. Currently, in Peterborough, you can get the nasal spray kits at PARN, obviously, at Forecast, and at the health unit. Intramuscular kits are still available at a number of different participating pharmacies. And beyond that, the hospital is carrying it for folks upon their release from the emergency department. All provincial and federal institutions are carrying Naloxone, and police and fire, actually, were just announced yesterday as well, are going to be carrying them.
So there's an obvious need for the kits in Peterborough. PARN alone has handed out 300 this year. Well, he figures that when you include the health unit, that 1,000 have been handed out. It's really a simple process. You walk in, they give you a thorough explanation of how to use the kit. It takes 15 minutes and you're out the door with the potential to save a life.
Which is great. There's been a lot of uptake in sort of the community in terms of perceived need to have these kits around, which is really reflective of the realities that we're facing. Peterborough has the 4th highest rate of overdoses in Ontario, which has some of the highest overdose rates in Canada, which has some of the highest rates in the world, right? So it really speaks to the scope of the issue. And again, how this is something that is not just impacting, again, the sort of stereotypical image that everyone has in their head. This is, again, much broader than that. And so really advocating that, you know, everyone who is engaged in opiate use in any way, shape, or form, or knows somebody who does, has, you know, a Naloxone kit on hand, I think it's just a good idea, honestly, to have as part of a first aid kit. You just never know when you're going to need it.
At this point, there's no actual way to determine how many lives Naloxone is saving in Peterborough, but if we save one life, that's a win. Saving.
It's definitely happening. I mean, again, because we've been sort of offering these kits for so long, we're starting to get folks who are coming back to get sort of their kits replenished, and sharing about the stories of bringing people around. One of the ones that I always, you know, sticks out to me is this is a person, you know, several months ago who came in to get a kit replaced. They had gotten a kit several months prior, and he got the training. They didn't use opiates themselves, but they were around people who did. Decided to experiment with heroin one night, and did a very small amount, but overdosed. And thankfully had that kit on hand, and it was able to be used on them, and they were revived. So, yeah, really speaks to again sort of the importance of having this life-saving tool. Yeah.
Any harm reduction measure always comes heavily scrutinized, and Naloxone is no different in this community. You always hear and read online, why are we enabling these users? But unfortunately, right now, this is literally the only tool we have to save lives.
There have been a number of studies done on Naloxone with regard to that issue specifically. And I have yet to see a report that supports that, again, this facilitates people increasing their use. If anything, what the data has shown is that it actually encourages people to use less because of the training that comes along it and the context that it's given. And again, I can't say that I've seen that, an increase in use as a product of naloxone in the community. Again, I think people are becoming aware of sort of the dangers of sort of what's out there right now, and again, we're seeing a shift. So
Naloxone is not the solution, but it is a band-aid solution while lives are at stake. What needs to be realized is the underlying issues that are involved with substance abuse.
Issues around substance use are so much more complicated than this. No behavior exists in a vacuum. Again, people don't just use out of nowhere. There are many different factors that sort of precede that. In almost all cases, trauma is involved. And trauma, in most cases, is about sort of broken down connection. And so, again, really looking at ways that we can, support the people in our lives. Really advocate to our politicians about, sort of increases in support for, mental health and addictions. But there's also a role that we each individually have to play, just in terms of creating safe spaces to talk to one another and open up about the things that are going on in our lives. So often, again, we exist in communities where it's sort of taboo to talk about, the stuff that's going on deep down inside of us. But I think it's really important in terms of, again, our community health to create those spaces. So as best as we can, if we can all sort of work to, again, listen to one another, I think that's going to have a significant impact.